Alright, it seems like the gangster theme on Versus is never going to go away. Because it always seems like we find a brand new one every single time. This one is one that kind of creeped up on us here, just a little bit. Gangster Squad has been something we've been wanting to do for a while. And same with the Untouchables. So, let's put them together. AJ will find out what happens when Gangster Squad faces the Untouchables. Take it away.
Well, technically, I've already reviewed Gangster Squad a couple of times, if you go far back enough.
Yes.
But I guess it didn't get really a proper one.
Yeah, correct.
And I was trying to think. Well, we were doing the trying to think of the gangster things, and I was initially trying to put these. Like originally, it was going to be Gangster Squad with L.A. Confidential, even though L.A. Confidential is not really a gangster movie at all. But for some reason, those two always got compared, so I was going to make what probably would have been a controversial video regarding what's better between L.A. Confidential and Gangster Squad. And that's when I remembered the fact that Gangster Squad and the Untouchables are pretty much the same movie. So, just in slightly different time periods with different gangsters at their center.
Okay.
We're going to start with the Untouchables. I have a very cool memory with the Untouchables. When I first saw it, not necessarily when I first saw the movie, like as a whole, but the first time I laid eyes on it, I don't remember what was going on, but I only saw the opening scene on some movie channel. Okay. I don't know if I was like waiting for something else to come on and I changed it, or if I had to leave or what, but the first time I laid eyes on the Untouchables, all I saw was the opening. With the credits, and then it comes in, and there's the words that say, it's 1930, and this is it sets up Capone, and Capone's laying there on a barber shop with a hot towel over his face to where you can't see him, and it's just slowly panning down, and then, he takes off the towel, and it's De Niro as Capone, and he's doing a big, gangster monologue. And we obviously know there isn't a gangster monologue like a De Niro one.
No.
And while he's giving this monologue, the barber is putting the shaving cream on him. And then while he's in the middle of talking, the barber accidentally cuts him. And he's like bleeding. And he just kind of looks at the blood on his fingers and then looks at the barber. And it's like you can tell something really bad is probably going to happen. But then he just keeps talking and does his monologue. And that's what the opening scene is. He never does anything bad to the barber that we know of. The scene just kind of ends there after he lets it go and keeps monologuing. And I was like really young at this time, probably 10 or 11. But for whatever reason, I had to go away from the movie at that point. All I could think about was that scene and how I really gotta see what the rest of that is. I just have to. And of course I eventually did. Now I've seen it numerous times, of course. It's very interesting because it's a De Palma movie. And when you think De Palma movie, you generally think like trashy slasher movies or like really pulpy thrillers. And this is a really elegant period gangster movie that people compare to The Godfather on a regular basis. And you wouldn't expect that. But, obviously, much like both movies we have here, it involves, we have he's a treasury officer, I think. I had to think of that for a second. And he's, basically obsessed with the idea of getting Capone, because our second opening scene is when, Frank Nitti drops off a bomb at a diner. And there's a little girl there. And he puts it in a briefcase, he leaves it there, and then he leaves. And the girl, being a nice, good deed doer, decides she's going to take the briefcase to him. And when she picks up the briefcase and goes to run out the door with it, the whole place explodes, including her. And when Elliot Ness sees this girl's death reported in the paper, he basically a switch flips and he never returns. Like, I'm gonna do everything I can to arrest Al Capone and get him put away forever. So he decides, and then it gets even worse when his investigation gets a little too close, and Frank Nitty's sitting outside his house just watching, saying, like, you know, you have a really nice family, and so I know it's your daughter's birthday and stuff like that, and just really threatening shit like that. So he has all these motives to want to bring Al Capone down completely. So he decides to band together a little ragtag group of people that will go against, you know, because the entire police force is practically corrupt and on Capone's payroll. I can feel the hiccups coming on. This is not good 6 minutes into a video. So his team consists of an ex-cop who just kind of patrols the area now, who is Sean Connery, who won an Oscar for this. Being, you know, the tough Irish cop who kind of pushes this forward more than anybody else, because he at first he's resistant, but then, you know, he's always wanted to do this. Like he says, you know, if you had, you know, talked to me about this, you know, 10 years and 20 pounds earlier, I would have been all over this, but I'm just concerned with staying alive now. I don't want to get into any too much danger. But naturally he comes around because what Elliot Ness is doing now is all he wanted to do in his prime. And now he's finally getting that opportunity. And then we have a very, you know, the young can draw a gun at any moment and doesn't put up with anybody's shit. That's Andy Garcia, who they find, you know, just in training, just, you know, trying to follow the book but doesn't really want to, which is exactly what they're looking for. And then finally, there is an accountant played by Charles Martin Smith, who is absolutely under the impression that they can get Capone on a tax charge, at least, you know, just so they have something. And he just kind of comes in and out of the movie just, you know, trying to drive this in, like, we can get him on the tax thing, I'm telling you. And so finally, the three of them have gathered together with Costner, Connery, and Andy Garcia. And they're getting ready to go on their own raid for the first time. They have the shotguns ready and everything. And Connery says, well, there's just one thing. We need one more guy. And the accountant just happens to walk in at that time, and they hand him a shotgun and say, come on. And thus you have the four of them who are called the Untouchables because they can't be corrupted. Now, the interesting thing about L.A. Ness's character is he could be really boring because he's just, you know, that do-gooder that must do everything. And there's that moment at the beginning I really like where they kind of play it up as this, I guess this is kind of where it gets a little De Palma, where it really, really plays up the 40 style gangster movie, or 30 style in this case. And Elliot Ness is such like this perfect image that he's actually in a plow and they're getting ready to break in and bust this alcohol distribution. He gets in the plow and just as they're about to go in, he looks at them and says, let's go do some good. And then they plow in and do their thing, but it ends up that Capone was setting them up and it's just like umbrellas and there was nothing incriminating there. And now Elliot Ness has practically been humiliated away from, and he's like a leper as far as the rest of the cops are concerned. And there's actually, after we have that big moment where it feels sincere in the moment, the very next scene after that, like one cop is telling another cop about what happened. They're like, yeah, he was in the plow and he said, let's go do some good, and they're laughing at him. And that's when you realize that maybe Elliot Ness's expectations of this are unrealistic, but when the four of them band together, things get surprisingly moving forward. When they go on their first raid, it's almost like a scene out of a Western that just happens to have cars in it, I guess.
Alright.
Because obviously the tone was going to be very interesting when you give De Palma a movie like this, because David Mamet wrote the script. So you have a very interesting recipe here with a guy known for like trashy thrillers, a David Mamet script, and 1930s gangsters. It sounds like it could have been a complete disaster, actually.
Yeah.
But somehow it just made this perfect blend. Like, just, it was almost miraculous, really. And I love how they really play, like, you can kind of, like, it might seem cheesy or dated or whatever, but I think De Palma was kind of intentionally playing up the old-style gangster thing. Like, the moment where the guy, they bust in and they're doing a raid, and there's this guy that approaches Connery, or Costner, one of them, about having a warrant. And this guy is extremely over-the-top 30s gangster.
Nice.
Like, I think they kind of intentionally did that, where it's almost like a Dick Tracy feel sometimes. It's worth noting, apart from Connery's Oscar win, we also had, there were Oscar nominations for the costume design, obviously. It's, production design, which is something that really stands out in this movie. Like the exterior shots are just really massive looking on a grand scale, and then there are those moments where you see like the inside of Capone's hotel. There's this really great shot of this red staircase you have to take to get up to Capone's room, and we kind of follow them all there. And this whole extravagant set is just amazing. And it's like, that's totally where I can imagine Al Capone stayed, at the top floor of.
Oh yeah.
And it got in score, which I find really interesting because it's actually, for the most part, sometimes you get that, 30s gangster stuff in there, but for the most part, the score is really unconventional, but works really, really well in context. So I've always loved that nomination. And yeah, about, I guess we can talk about Connery. You may not know, did you ever see this?
No.
Then you probably, this is one of those movies where I guarantee, from either references or people quoting or something, you probably know half of Connery's dialogue in this movie already.
It's possible.
Like, he has, when he has the line, he's talking about taking down Capone's, little army, and he says, he's trying to rev Costner up and tell him what all he needs to do, and how he really needs to just dive headfirst into it, and the whole, if his guys show up with a knife, you show up with a gun, and if they put one of yours in the hospital, you put one of theirs in the morgue.
In the morgue, yeah.
That's Connery's line from this.
You gotta remember that might have been like an Animaniacs episode, actually.
And he has that great line, that David Mamet dialogue, of course, where he's talking about, he's trying to explain to Elliot Ness about how pretty much all of the cops in the force are corrupt, so they have to really be careful when they're deciding who's going to be in their little ragtag group here, their quartet. And he's talking about where they're going to find cops, and that's when they go find Andy Garcia, when they find him where he's, just starting, where he's still in training. So his way about it is, if you want an apple, don't pick one from the barrel, you pick it off the tree.
Mm.
Dialogue like that. And Connery really sells it through the whole thing, and gets to do the tough guy thing really well too. Like, this is the movie I know Bond and everything, certainly, but I feel like when a lot of people are doing impressions of Sean Connery, where like all the S's or SH's, they're doing him in the Untouchables. There's that great moment where, after the raid and they're picking up, one of Capone's guys, and they're trying to get information out of him. Ness has already killed one of them dead, and they're out laying on the porch outside, and they're indoors interrogating this guy. So Connery goes outside and picks up the guy's dead body, who the other guy doesn't know is dead, and he's acting like he's interrogating the dead body, and then says, okay, and then puts the gun in his mouth and blows its head apart. Of course, the guy was already dead, but of course that makes the other guy say, oh my god, okay, I'll talk. Yeah, that's another thing, is, that's very De Palma-y about this movie, is, for being this really elegant-looking 30s gangster movie, when the violence hits, it hits really hard. There's a lot of brain matter in this movie. Like the guy that gets shot in the elevator, and then, Frank Nitti falling through the car. Now, the thing about it is, and there's just sudden bursts of violence too, and I love it how, none of the Untouchables are exactly invincible. Like, it's only an hour. Like, Charles Martin Smith gets the second credit there. It's a 2-hour movie, and it's only an hour in when we lose him, and the Untouchables start getting picked off. The next one's Connery, and so on. And that's a great moment where it's it sounds kind of cheesy, but in context, it makes you kind of go like, "Oh shit's going down." Was news has broken out that they're untouchable, and nothing can come of them. So after the guy in the elevator and Charles Martin Smith have been killed, they are hanging Charles Martin Smith by the top of the elevator, and on the wall in blood they've just written "touchable." And that's kind of it sounds cheesy when you just say it, but when you see it in context, it's like, oh man, this is when shit's going down. And it's great because it's actually, despite the elegance of it, it's kind of an action movie. There's a lot of shootouts, particularly the most famous one, obviously, is in the train station with the steps. Sure, you've at least seen that parodied, I'm sure.
Mm-hmm.
Where they're expecting Capone's guys to show up, and the woman is trying to get her bags and her baby's carriage up the very long staircase. So Elliot Ness, being the perfect person that he is, must help this woman get her baby up the steps before Capone's guys show up. And it happens simultaneously, so he has to run down the staircase, chasing after the baby's carriage while shooting all of Capone's guys that are coming at him. And it's this fantastic scene that's been parodied and referenced over and over and over again. And I think it's kind of a reference to Battleship Potemkin too anyway, so it's all referencing each other here, but it all comes back to here usually. Let's talk De Niro. Now, De Niro, much like Penn in Gangster Squad, I think De Niro's gotten some flack for going pretty over the top here. But that's the character, and it feels really fitting in the movie. And there's one really great scene, another scene that's referenced a lot, where he's having this dinner at a round table, and this is a huge-ass table with a nice white tablecloth.
Of course.
And he's saying, what is my greatest love in life? And they're saying, like, oh, it's women, or, oh, it's, whatever, money, whatever. And he says, actually, it's baseball. And he has a wooden baseball bat in his hand. And he's just circling behind the people in this table while he's monologuing with this bat in his hand. And he finally reaches one guy and just beats his head in. Remember when I was talking about there's a lot of brain matter in this movie?
Mm-hmm.
Yes. And that's all the scene is. It doesn't really connect to anything. It's just to kind of build up his character in the middle of the movie. And that great shot where you just see everybody was having dinner too, and you just see like the one splatter that's like across it, and then just the long pan up as we see it like flowing out of him while he's laying face down in it over this white tablecloth, and everybody's just sitting in silence. A lot of great and memorable scenes in this movie, to say the least. And of course, the fantastic ending where he finally catches Capone by all of the juries have been bribed. So at the last minute, right before the verdict's going to be released, he switches the juries on him entirely. He only gets him put away for 11 years, but still, for Elliot Ness, that was a gigantic victory. And of course, the great last shot of this movie where they say, well, it looks like Prohibition's ending, what are you going to do? And he says, well, I think I'll have a drink. And then he walks off onto that fantastic 1930s set as we fade out. It's a really great piece of movie making, this movie is. I know some people think it's a little dated, and some people think it's, there are some. One of the only problems I really have with it, and I wouldn't have really noticed this if I hadn't been such the technological aspects of movies as much as I am now. If anything keeps this movie from being perfect, it's kind of sloppily edited. Like, some of it kind of feels like, well, that was weirdly cut, but that's a very minor issue in a very fantastic movie overall. And I think many, many, many people agree and will continue to agree for many years. And then we have a new addition to this genre that just came out in January of last year. Well, next month will be 2 years ago.
Wow.
Or else I'm losing my throat. Gangster Squad's a different story. It also does not have the acclaim. It's a little rare to come across somebody that likes Gangster Squad, but here I am to its rescue.
Yes.
Here's the thing. What I don't think a lot of people quite understand. Here's the thing. Okay, I know it was easy to probably grasp the idea of, oh yeah, this is going to be a real gangster movie, kind of like The Untouchables. Because you have, Josh Brolin and Ryan Gosling and Nick Nolte and Sean Penn as your big gangster. It's Mickey Cohen this time, and it's 19 years later, 1949. Well, here's the thing. What I don't think a lot of people... I don't know what people are thinking here, because this was so blatantly obvious to me the whole time. Gangster Squad is not necessarily a movie to be taken extremely seriously. It is an extremely, extremely over-the-top action movie that's made to look really comic booky. I'm not quite sure what people were expecting when they criticized the movie for that, because that's what it is from start to finish, and there was never anything to say otherwise. It didn't think it was anything else.
It's true.
And you know this because the first scene of the movie is really over the top. We fade in, no credits right away, no nothing. All we get is the date and the location, and we fade in, and it's Mickey Cohen on a hillside with a dude chained between two cars from both sides. And this scene ends with the cars parting ways and the dude fucking splitting in half. This movie knew what it was from the get-go.
Oh, yeah.
The scene where Brolin goes in and does the slow motion hitting, the blood looks practically black flying out of the guy's mouth in slow motion. This movie knows exactly what it is. I don't know why a lot of people don't. But yeah, so it's another thing, like I was saying with The Untouchables, it's got a real, when I said The Untouchables has some Dick Tracy moments, Gangster Squad totally embraces Dick Tracy. It's basically a really R-rated bloody version of it.
That was an original idea we had for this versus too at one point.
Yeah, it was. And then that's when I realized, The Untouchables is exactly Gangster Squad is exactly The Untouchables, just with a different gangster. And one of the things that it got a lot of problems was Sean Penn's performance. And this really pisses me off, actually. Legitimately. Because here's the thing. You got Sean Penn doing his politics. You got him, chasing paparazzi. You got him screaming at fans. Just being an all-around douchebag, pretty much. It's what he's known for. And when this stuff happens, and when you watch his movies, all people do is complain and complain and complain that Sean Penn takes himself way too seriously. That's the biggest complaint you always hear about Sean Penn.
Yeah.
So he takes this role as Mickey Cohen, realizes what kind of movie he's in, and just goes completely, entirely over the top. Sean Penn becomes a fucking comic book character.
Big Boy Caprice. Yes. Al Pacino and Dick Tracy.
And people hated him in this movie.
Yeah, I remember hearing that.
And that just does not make sense to me, because this is exactly what I think people wanted him to do when they said he was taking himself too seriously, because this movie, despite popular belief, is not taking itself too seriously, nor is Penn in it. But, whatever. This movie was hated first sight for a lot of people, especially critics, but...
Oh, yeah. We were definitely in the minority here.
Yeah. So, obviously, your characters aren't near as fleshed out as they should be. You have your tough guy who brings everybody together, who is Brolin, and then you have Gosling as his kind of partner in crime. Well, opposite of crime, but at the same time not. But and then we have all of our characters. There are 6 this time. There's the loose cannon, who is Anthony Mackie.
Yes. There's
the tech guy, who's Giovanni Ribisi. There's the veteran, who's Robert Patrick, and there's the rookie, who's Michael Pena. And yeah, that's pretty much the extent of their characters, but this is the kind of movie where that's not really that big of an issue. The only character issue I have in this movie is Emma Stone's character, because I mean, she's won. Everything about Emma Stone is wonderful.
Yes.
Everything.
We'll get to gush about her in a couple weeks, no worries.
But the issue is her character is so entirely pointless.
Yeah.
They set her up to be important, but she's not at all in the long run.
No.
Because here's the thing. She and Gosling's character have a fling, but she is Mickey Cohen's girl. She's also his etiquette coach, for some reason. And they set this up as like a one-night stand thing. And then we just abandon that, and we focus entirely on the central plot. But then suddenly later in the movie, they're like the love of each other's life, and he's like ready to kill Mickey Cohen over her. And we haven't seen her like since.
Yeah.
That felt a little out of place. And like there's like it's like a mutual undying love too.
A lot of things had to be cut apparently.
That or it's just a sloppy excuse to get, Gosling's character more, invested,
screen time.
Well, he was already friends with that little shoe shining kid. So
Yeah.
I don't know why he needed so many people to care about here.
It's true.
But, alright. So yes. But still, it's not like she's bad in the movie or anything.
No.
And there's, another character issue. There's a character in this named Revok, who's played by Troy Garrity, who's a really great actor. He's Jane Fonda's son. And he's in a lot of great movies. He's the stunt guy in Bandits. He's like the one white guy in Barbershop. And he plays this character who's an assassin that works for Mickey Cohen. And they really build him up like he's going to be this badass character.
Yep.
And while he's on screen, he is. But the trouble is that number one, I don't think he gets a line. Which is, can be okay if you're playing like a badass silent type character, but they only used that character like twice. Like, I really felt like he was supposed to be a lot more than he actually was.
Yeah.
But, yes. But yeah, while he's there, I thought the character was like, really kind of had that badass appeal to him, but he was missing a lot. It's probably worth noting that there was going to be a really awesome scene in this movie.
Yes.
As we know, this was set for, what was it? September or October. It was set for September.
September.
Then it got moved to October. But then they put Argo in its place because the Colorado shooting happened. Because there was a scene in the trailer where the big scene that happened was the guys shot through the movie theater screen in a crowded theater and came through the screen.
Awesome.
They had to scrap that, obviously, and completely reshoot the scene, and that's what the Chinatown scene is.
Mm-hmm.
Now, mind you, while that scene looked fantastic, and I'm sure it was, for being a last-minute reshoot, the Chinatown scene's pretty awesome, too.
Yeah.
So, I feel like they really had a nice grasp on this movie. The movie doesn't get near enough credit.
No.
That they were able to go back and reshoot that last minute and still make a really good scene out of it. And just the fact that it never seems to lose the grasp of what it is. Just this over-the-top action movie just for fun. Yeah, it uses historical characters, but, like, just as a foundation, really.
Yeah.
Artistic freedom, shit like that,
Mm-hmm.
That I would totally just... they didn't go completely comic book like I necessarily would have wanted them to. There is one scene where I thought they dropped the ball. Maybe this is just me, but honestly, if you're going to go for that comic book feel, you really go for it. We had the opening scene where the guy was split in half by the cars.
Yeah.
And then later on, Mickey Cohen is asked by the media where that guy is. And he just says something like, he's gone or something. Like, whatever. Seriously, could he not have said he split town as he puts his cigar in? Come on.
I was thinking you saying those exact words like right now too.
That was the perfect setup.
I agree.
But no, I think Gangster Squad is really fun.
Yeah, it's excellent.
I really like watching Gangster Squad.
Yep.
I think it's a badass action movie that's got some fun characters in it if they're, cut out. I think Penn is a fucking blast. Going out of his, seriousness. I thought that was great to see him do.
Oh, yeah.
And I just think it gets a really bad rap that it doesn't deserve. But having said that, well, in regards to battling other movies, in its genre, lower tier, not like Godfather, but, you know, the Untouchables lives up to its title. So, okay. I think that's it here.
So ends another edition of Versus. Next week, we're going to end 2014 with a little circus magic. So that's your Versus for the final one, 2014. No worries, Versus is not going anywhere, much to AJ's sleeping chagrin. Versus will continue to be every Sunday here on Pop, so stay tuned for the rest of the week for all the content. Brand new Sip and Snack coming up on Christmas Day itself. And we also have wrestling content as well as a blog of randomness that's for my mom. Since it's the holiday season, so it's very appropriate. So, AJ, any parting words?
That's it.